All right, today in Math 1, we're going to be covering Unit 4.1 Notes. All right, and we're going to be solving multi-step equations, or just solving equations. And I am going to teach you my foolproof way of solving equations. All right, so when we solve equations, in my book it's as easy as A, B, C, D, but it's as easy as D, C, B, A, okay? D, C, B, A. D, C, B, A. These are the 4 steps to solve an equation. If you follow these 4 steps, whoops, 3 comes before 4. If you follow these 4 steps, you will never have a problem solving equations. All right, so here's how it works. The first thing you should always do when solving equations is distributive property. Now, not every equation requires you to use distributive property, but that's the first thing you should always try to do. All right? Step 2, after you've used distributive property, you should combine like terms. You do have to remember, when combining like terms, you would combine like terms on the left and then on the right. Okay, so when you're combining like terms, you combine all the terms on the left side of the equation and then all the terms on the right side of the equation. So let me give you a quick little example of that. If we had 3x plus 5 minus x equals, let's go with 4x plus 7 minus 3. Well, when we talk about the left side of the equation, what we're talking about is over here. And we have to decide, what are the like terms on the left? Well, 3x and negative 1x are like terms, so we would add those two together and end up with 2x plus 5. And the right side of the equation is right here. And what's on the right side? Well, we have 7 and negative 3 are like terms. They're both integers. And when we add those two together, we end up with 4x plus 4. So when we talk about combining like terms, we combine any like terms on the left side, and then we combine any like terms on the right side. Okay? So the third step, after we've distributed and we've combined like terms, we would balance the equation. Okay? Now, when we talk about balancing an equation, we're talking about moving things from one side of the equation to the other. All right? If you think about a scale, okay, I'm going to draw my little scale here as best I can. All right? It's not fancy. But when we think about a scale, the scales of justice, all right, if I've got 5 x's over here and I've got, I don't know, it doesn't really matter, let's say 9 x's on this side. Okay, let me move that up a bit. Okay, if I was to subtract 3 x's on this side, what's going to happen? Well, this side is going to go down and it's not going to be balanced anymore. So if I want to keep the equation balanced like a scale, if I take 3 from this side, I would have to subtract 3x from this side as well. So when we talk about balancing an equation, what it means is if we're going to take 3 from the right, we have to take 3 from the left. If I added maybe just 7 to this side, okay, well then the scale's going to get heavier. So what do I have to do to keep it balanced? I have to add 7 to this side. All right, let's do a quick little example of that. Let's say we had 3x plus 5 equals 7x minus 2. Well, I want to get all the x's on one side, so if I subtract 3x from this side, I've got to subtract 3x from this side. That would keep it balanced. If I subtract the 3x from this side, I've got to subtract 3x from that side. That's how we keep the equation balanced. The rule is you can do whatever you want to an equation as long as you do it to both sides of the equation. I can add 10 here. I could add 10 on this side. All right, and step 4 is answer by division. Answer by division or multiplication. Okay? So we have 4 steps to solve an equation. The first step is always distributive property, if it needs to be done. The second step is combine like terms, again, if it needs to be done. The third step is balance the equation, which means get all the variables to one side and all the constants to the other by adding the opposite. And step 4, answer by division or multiplication. Usually it's division. All right, so let's go ahead and put my 4 steps into work here. All right, so these are the notes that you should have copied from Google Classroom, or maybe you're just going to copy them down as you progress through this on a separate sheet of paper. Either way, when you're done, you're going to upload these notes into Google Classroom to show me that you actually did them, and you're going to make sure that they're in PDF form. All right, so let's go ahead and get started solving some equations. So as I said, we take our equation, and the first thing we should try and do is distributive property. You can see that there's no place to distribute here, so we're just going to go on to combining like terms. Step 2. All right, well, when we're talking about combining like terms, it happens on one side of the equation or the other. And I can see that I have a negative 1h and a negative 1h. So when I combine like terms, negative 1 plus negative 1 is negative 2h equals negative 13. Hopefully you'll also notice I only do one step at a time. So I'm done combining like terms. Okay? So I go on to balance. Now balance means gets all the variables to one side and all the constants to the other. So you can see here I've only got variables on the left, so I might as well move that 19 to the other side by adding the opposite. You add the opposite. What's the opposite of 19? Negative 19. But again, if I'm going to add negative 19 to this side, I've got to add negative 19 to this side. So 19 plus negative 19 cancels each other out. That's 0. So I bring down the negative 2h, bring down the equal sign, and now negative 13 plus negative 19 is negative 32. When signs are the same, keep the sign and add. And then finally, I balanced. And then finally, answer by division. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. Now what are we trying to do here? We're trying to get h by itself. And negative 2 divided by negative 2, when you divide something by itself, it equals 1. So we end up with 1h, or simply h. We bring down the equal sign. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. 32 divided by 2 is 16. So h equals 16. Now, if you're a really good student, you always take your answer and you plug it back in. And what do you get here? Well, 19 minus 16 is 3. And 3 plus negative 16 is negative 13. So our answer is correct. It's always a good idea to check your work. I don't require you to do it, but you should be able to. And the more you do it, the better you're going to be. All right, let's go on to number 2. All right, so again, we want to think DCBA. Do we need to distribute here? Nope. So at the beginning, I usually like to draw my fence. I call that my fence, which divides the two sides of the equation. No need to distribute. Do I need to combine like terms? Well, let's see. On the left, we've got 14 and negative 8. Those are both integers, so I will combine them, and I end up with 6a plus 6. 14 plus negative 8 is 6. Bring down the equal sign, and I bring down the right-hand side. All right, so I'm done combining like terms, so I go to B, balance. Balance means all the variables to one side and all the integers or constants to the other. So the only thing I need to do is move that 6 to the other side by adding the opposite of positive 6 to both sides. So 6 plus negative 6, or 6 minus 6, is 0. 6a comes down, equal sign comes down, and 18 minus 6 is 12. Done there. Finally, answer by division. Divide both sides by 6. 6 over 6 is 1a, or just a. Bring down the equal sign. 12 divided by 6 is 2. And again, it's always a good idea to plug in. Always plug in with parentheses. 14 plus 12 is 26. And 26 minus 8 is in fact 18. So we did it correct. Any questions on number 2? All right, let's keep going. Number 3. All right, number 3. DCBA. Distribute? Nope, not yet. Combine like term? Well, let's put up our fence to make sure we need to combine. All right, yep, I can see I've got 7 and negative 12. Those are both integers. So I rewrite the equation. 25, equal sign comes down. All right, so I got 3k, and negative 12 plus 7 is negative 5. All right? And now what am I going to do? I'm done combining like terms. I'm going to balance. All the variables to one side, all the integers to the other. Well, it looks like I got to move that negative 5 to the other side. And I always balance by adding the opposite. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0, so on this side we're left with just 3k. Equals 25 plus 5 is 30. And then finally, answer by division. We'll divide both sides by 3. And we get k equals 10. Okay? And again, I'm not going to keep doing this every time, but it's always a good idea to plug that in. And what we get is 30 plus 7 is 37, and 37 minus 12 is in fact 25, so we did it right. Okay, moving on to number 4. I forgot to rename these guys. All right, so DCBA. All right, well, finally we have to distribute. Distribute means I'm going to multiply everything inside the parentheses times 6. So we end up with 6 times 3m is 18m. And then 6 times 5 is 30. So we end up with 18m plus 30 equals 66. We don't need to combine like terms on the left or the right, so we're not going to use that this time. So we go right down to balance. Well, there's only variables on this side, so the only thing I have to do is move that integer to the other side by adding the opposite. 30 plus negative 30 is 0, so the only thing we have on this side is the 18m. The equal sign comes down, and 66 minus 30 is, well, 6 minus 0 is 6, 6 minus 3 is 3, and we end up with 18 equals 36. Okay, last step, answer by division. Divide both sides by 18, and we end up with m equals 2. And 6 times 3 times 2 plus 5 equals 66. Well, let's see. 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 times 5 is 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 plus 5 is 11, and 6 times 11 is 66, so it works out okay. All right, moving down to what should be number 5. Cross out that number 9. Okay, again, DCBA, distribute, yep. So 3 times 4y is 12y, and 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. The equal sign comes down, 12 comes down. Combine like terms. I don't need to combine on the left, and I don't need to combine on the right, so I'll simply go down to balance, which means all the variables on one side, all the integers on the other. Well, since I only have variables on the left, I'll just go ahead and move that integer to the other side by adding the opposite. 12y comes down, equal sign comes down, 12 plus 24 is 36. And now, final step, answer by division. Divide both sides by 12. 12 divided by 12 is 1y, or simply y. The equal sign comes down. 36 divided by 12 is 3. How are we doing so far? Am I going too fast? All right, good. I don't hear any no's. I get some thumbs up. So let's go on. I think we're finally going to have to use maybe all 4 steps this time. Let's see. D. Yep. Now be careful on this one. Remember, that's not a minus sign, that's a negative sign. So we have to distribute negative 2. So I'm going to bring down the x, and then negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times 10 is negative 20. Equal sign comes down, and the 12 comes down. All right? Everybody good with that? Second step, combine like terms. Well, I've got an x and a negative 2x. I have to combine those. 1 plus negative 2 is simply negative 1x minus 20 equals 12. Okay? B, balance. Well, I've got only a variable on this side, so let's just move that negative 20 to the other side by adding the opposite. So I'll add 20 to both sides. Negative 20 plus 20 is 0, so we're just left with negative 1x over here. And 12 plus 20 is 32. All right. Now again, we don't want to know what negative 1x equals. We want to know what positive 1x equals. So we'll divide both sides by negative 1. A negative divided by a negative is a positive 1x, or simply x. Equal sign comes down. 32 divided by negative 1 is negative 32. All right, so finally we used all 4 steps. We distributed, we combined like terms, we balanced, and then we got our answer by dividing. Any questions? Okay, let's go on to the next page.
Mr. Zimmer?
Yes.
Is it okay if I work ahead?
Yeah, if you, as long as you're getting the steps down the way I want you to do them.
Okay, follow-up question. What do I do when I'm done?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to work on our homework that I posted in Delta Math. Okay, moving on to number 15. So you might say, well, we don't need to distribute here. There's no parentheses, but we've got these fractions, and we don't like dealing with fractions. So the one thing you guys have got to remember to do is find a common denominator. What's the common denominator? Well, in this case, it's pretty easy. It's 7, isn't it? So what we're going to do to get rid of these fractions is we're actually going to distribute 7 to every numerator. So I'm going to multiply every numerator by 7. So 7 times a is 7a over 7. And I'll bring the plus sign on down. 7 times 5 is 35 over 7. Equal sign will come on down. 7 times 2 is 14 over 7. So all I did was I distributed a 7 to every numerator inside the parentheses. Of course, I added those parentheses, didn't I? And now we're going to reduce, okay? So 7a divided by 7, or 7 divided by 7 is 1a. 35 divided by 7 is 5. Equal sign comes on down. 14 divided by 7 is 2. All right. So that's the way to eliminate fractions. Now some of you, we have to be honest, some of you are better at math than others. If you're not really super strong in math, I would definitely do this step. But if you feel confident, some of you will just go, hey, 7 times a is 7a divided by 7 is a. 7 times 5 is 35 divided by 7 is 5. 7 times 2 is 14 divided by 7 is 2. I have no problem with that, okay? But either way, we distributed, but we don't need to combine like terms, so now we're going to balance. And again, we have only a variable on the left, so we're going to move that integer to the other side by adding the opposite to both sides. And we get a equals 2 plus negative 5, or negative 3. Okay? And this one is a good one to check. I'm going to plug in negative 3 for a. And what you should remember is when adding fractions, we have to have a common denominator, and we do. Oops, that's a 7 right there, sorry. So negative 3 plus 5 is negative 2. I'm sorry, negative 3 plus 5 is 2. Common denominator, so 2 7ths equals 2 7ths. So it worked out. All right, let's go on to the next problem. All right, again, we have fractions, so the easy thing to do is to distribute the common denominator to everything on the inside, all of the numerators. So we can see here, you can think of this guy as 1. So we can see the common denominator is 8. What number will all of these go into evenly? Well, 1 goes into 8 8 times. 8 goes into 8 once. 8 goes into 8 once. So we're going to multiply everything by 8. So that's where the distributive property comes in. All right, so 6 times 8 is 48v over 1. Obviously, we probably don't need that. The minus sign is going to come down. 8 times 5 is 40 over 8. Equal sign comes down. 8 times 7 is 56 over 8. And now when we reduce, 48v over 1 is just 48v. Negative 40 divided by 8 is negative 5. Equal sign comes down. 56 divided by 8 is 7. Okay? And again, as I said before, if you go right from the first step to the third step, I'm perfectly okay with that. And now we're simply going to move the negative 5 to the other side by adding the opposite. We get 48v equals 12. Divide both sides by 48. We always reduce, so 48 over 48 equals 1, or just v. 12 goes into 12 once, and 12 goes into 48 4 times. All right, now, fractions and decimals. Whenever I come up with a fraction or a decimal for an answer, I always go back and check my work. Okay? But I did my work correctly, so that's my answer. You guys should know in life that, most of the time, your answers are not going to come out nice and even. Think about when you go to the store. How often when you go to the store does your bill, or whatever they tell you you owe, is an even number? How many times you go to the store and they ask you, okay, $20 please, or $70 please? Not very often. Usually it's $13.87 or $13.87. And that's the way most math problems are as well. We as math teachers make the problems come out even because we want to make it easier for you. But realize answers or questions in life do not come out nice and even. All right, so let's move on. All right, we've got fractions again, so this one's a little more challenging. We're going to distribute the common denominator. Now, what is the common denominator? What do all three of these numbers go into evenly? Realize a common denominator has to be at least as big as your biggest number. Whoops. There you go, that's better. Okay, well, in this case, the common denominator is 18 because 9 goes into 18 twice, 2 goes into 18 9 times, and 18 goes into 18 once. So I'm going to distribute 18 to every numerator on the inside. All right, so 18 times b is 18b over 9. Minus sign comes down. 18 times 1 is 18 over 2. Equal sign comes down. All right, 5 times 18 is 90 divided by 18. All right, now we'll reduce. 18 divided by 9 is 2b. Minus sign comes down. 18 divided by 2 is 9. Equal sign comes down. All right, and 90 divided by 18 is 5. All right, balance. I'm going to move the negative 9 to the other side by adding the opposite. We'll add 9 to both sides. We get 2b equals 14. We'll divide both sides by 2, and we get b equals 7. Any questions? All right, just a couple more. Now, I'll be honest with you, on these last three, we're dealing with decimals. And since we now kind of let you guys use calculators, sometimes this is not that big of a deal for you guys. But I do want to show you how to get rid of decimals if you don't like dealing with them. It's pretty easy, actually. All right, so you can see we have the tens place, and tens place. So if we simply distribute a 10 to everything on the inside, negative 4.2 times 10 is just going to be negative 42. You should know when you multiply something, a decimal, by a power of 10, you move the decimal 1 to the right. So 10 times negative 4.2 simply equals negative 42. And 10 times negative, or excuse me, let me bring down the equal sign. 10 times 9.1x is simply 91x. Plus sign comes down. 10 times 23.1 is just 231. We simply moved all the decimal places 1 to the right. Okay, so now we've eliminated the decimals. We've got an x on this side, so we just have to move that 231 to the other side by adding the opposite of 231, which is negative 231. That goes away. We're left with 91x on this side. The equal sign comes down. And negative 231 plus 42 is negative 273. Divide both sides by 91. You can use a calculator if you need to, but we get x equals negative divided by a positive is a negative. 273 divided by 91 is 3. Okay, easy way to see that is, well, 9 goes into 27 3 times, and 3 goes into 1 3 times. I'm sorry, 1 goes into 3 3 times. All right, 2 more. All right, tens place, hundreds place. So we're going to multiply everything by the biggest decimal, 100. So distributing 11.3 times 100 is, I simply go 1, 3, and add a 0. 1, 2. Minus sign comes down. 7.2f times 100 is 720f. Equal sign comes down. And negative 3.82 equals negative 382. Now some of you might think, hey, this is harder than with the decimals. It's really up to you. Either way, I've only got an f on this side, so I'm going to move that 1130 to the other side by adding the opposite. I'm going to subtract 1,130 from both sides. The negative, got to keep track of those negative signs. Negative 720F comes down. And let's see, this ends up being negative plus a negative is a negative. You keep the sign and add. That's 1,000. Nope. Let's see, 1,000. It's going to be 4,500 and what, 18? I think so. Let's see, 18. Nope, 12. Sorry, 12. Okay. And now let's divide both sides by negative 720. Negative 720 divided by negative 720 is just 1F. And let's see, that's 14. It looks like we're going to have to use a calculator here because that's not going to come out nice and neat. So I'm going to take 1,512 divided by 720, and I get 2.1. All right, last one. Here we go. Well, what do we got? Tens place, tens place, tens place. So I multiply everything by 10. I end up with 142 equals negative 68 plus 42D. I'm going to add 68 to both sides. I end up with, what do I end up, 210 equals 42D. Okay, I will divide both sides by 42, and I end up with D equals 5. All right, so guys, we went through a lot of examples. Went through, what, about 12 examples? That should cover everything you see in the next couple of days in Math 1. So, what we have to do today is just basically work on our weekly homework assignment. All right, I do not want you to leave. I'll probably let you go in about 25-30 minutes. I'll let you get out of here a little early for lunch. But I do want you working on Delta Math, week 15 homework. Of course, if you have questions, you need to speak up and ask questions, okay? How are we feeling about today? All right, thank you, those of you that actually gave me some acknowledgement. I appreciate the help. Let me stop recording.